Hello, everyone. Right. I would like to welcome Mary Ellen and Adrian, who will be talking about the power of collaboration and internship in the Open edX community. The talk will be about 30 minutes, and the Q&A session will be after that. Please give them a warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Mary Ellen, as he just said, and I come from MIT. I am a lecturer there and a director of online and blended learning in the Department of Biology and an Open edX user since 2013.
Hi, I'm Adrian Devizin, the executive director of Empowr, and we are a nonprofit teaching software development to Black high school students in low-income communities.
Was your mic on? Okay, so first I'm going to introduce the Digital Learning Lab. So I'm in the Department of Biology as my appointment, but I'm part of something that we call the Digital Learning Lab and a founding member of this group. This group started informally when MOOCs started at MIT. And we are people who are academic staff, usually instructional staff in a variety of departments, but we were the people who were the main point person in the department for open online courses. And then over time, the group became more formalized and officially recognized by the president of the university. And what we do is really work to have a connection between the students, the teachers, the faculty, with these open online courses and also with research, the educational research that's available. And so in a lot of ways, we are like a loom and weaving, and we're weaving the learners, the educators, the open online aspect with the between MOOCs research and residential. And by residential, we mean the MIT students, and we only have MIT students for degrees that are on campus, so those are residential.
Yeah, so Empowr is a nonprofit. We're dedicated to solving the education problem and democratizing education for all of our community. A lot of people don't realize, but 43% of Black children don't even have access to the math and science classes to go to college. So essentially, half of our population is being cut off before they can even get an opportunity. And so what we do is we teach software development as a 4-year program in schools directly to these students. We teach in person in Atlanta, Georgia, and we use Open edX as well to host our virtual classes nationwide and for our in-person students to complete their homework. We create a culturally relevant curriculum to be able to accomplish all of this, and our end goal is to ensure that all of our students graduate and either go to college or secure a career directly out of high school. It's a complex process to do what we do. We start by giving every student a MacBook, headphones, and an internet grant so that way we remove those digital barriers to entry. We utilize Koppin, which is an XBlock plugin that allows students to write code directly in our edX instance, and it's actually real executable code that they can see the output of. We have our classes that are in person, so that way, a lot of our students, they have to get jobs to help feed their families or babysit their siblings, and so we teach directly in schools during school hours and have our virtual program. And our students also build apps and games that we release and for the community. We get them internships as well, where the students can almost double their household income. And yeah, we go to the next one.
Okay, so what we wanted to do today is tell you a story of how we use the Open edX conference as an opportunity for collaboration and working together. And aside from that, I mean, compared to the last speaker, we're talking about a small-scale program instead of a large scale. And also just like the progress that we made in only a little over a year's time, that it is possible just to meet someone and then move with it. And so I think it's a good case to motivate maybe others to do that during their time here. And so last year at MIT, Adrian came and gave one of the keynotes, and Adrian also brought 2 of his students and a staff member of Empowr to the conference. And in his keynote address, he did ask at the end, these are ways you can help, and one of the ways would be internships. And so after he spoke, I talked to him about that at MIT, there's a lot of opportunities for high school students to do summer programs. So, they could have tried to apply to any of these programs and try to get in. But that conference was at the end of March, so a lot of the deadlines were early March or February. And so we already missed a lot of those deadlines. And so we thought about it. Really, there were 2 students that he wanted to have for internships, and they were ready for that program. So it was kind of small scale. It wouldn't be that costly to hire the 2 students. So we decided to just go with it and do a pilot on the fly with little planning and time of just trying it, and then using leftover budget and multiple resources to try to have a remote internship for these 2 students. Okay, so first we just wanted to go over some of the goals of the internship, and one is just to have multiple opportunities to engage and reflect. And so most of the people involved in this process and internship and collaboration on the MIT side are educators principally, so then we have this process of it being a learning experience, not just a job. And so on the digital learning lab side, we had a lot of little projects for courses around that would be nice to do. We didn't necessarily have the time to do it ourselves, or when we talked to other people about it, being a full-time job, the types of tasks were so diverse. It would be like, who would you hire for this kind of job? So these sort of tasks, though, would fit really well for a small student project. And so we wanted to give them many opportunities to have this be a learning experience. We wanted it to involve the application of coding in their projects because Adrian's teaching them about coding in the Empowr program. We wanted, as part of the learning process, there to be a chance to struggle. So we weren't going to prescribe very specific instructions on here's what to do, how to do it, and how to get to the end point. We wanted them to struggle and learn and figure out a way out of the problem when they had an issue. And in this program, a lot of mentoring or just summer programs at MIT are set up where it's like you're assigned one person. You work with that one person all summer. And this was a little different, that we want them to actually work with a variety of people in the digital learning lab and meet all of them and interact with all of them for better professional experience, and also just practicality of a lot of people taking vacation over the summer and needing that. And then this should be real work experience and be treated like a job for the students. And for the projects, they all are a chance for us to enhance the open online courses at MIT.
And we also wanted to be able to help the students, since lots of our students come from households where the average income is just $20,000 a year. They live in, poverty, and so we wanted this to be an opportunity for them to help bring in finances for their household.
Great. So we want to go over the selection and matching, and this is one way that enabled the program to just jumpstart right away. And Adrian will start with what he does with Empowr.
Yeah, so Empowr is kind of like we allow people in and we allow them to weed themselves out. And we structure it that way on purpose because a lot of the students in our community have never even encountered software development. They don't know what it is. So we allow everyone to join, and throughout that process, we allow them to explore if this is a career for them. And so when finding Thomas and Dawa, what we did was we looked at which students are actually, for this program, I should say, we looked at which students are taking this outside of the classroom. And Thomas and Dawa were both students who were taking the program they were learning in Empowr and applying it to their daily lives. So we thought they would be a great opportunity to try this out with.
And we thought early on it would be a good practice for the students to give us resumes, even though we were not doing selection. We were just okay, have them create a resume, do that step that they would have to in a real job application. And then we also, I met with all the students to do an informational interview for them to learn about us, to meet us, and then also for us to learn more about them before they started. So next we'll go over the structure. And it's pretty straightforward, but I mentioned too, we had it set up so there'd be a digital lab, learning lab member with one-on-one supervision, but then that would be across, everyone could meet with any student, and it's not that you would always have to meet with the same person. We just wanted to have a chance that there would be meetings and times where there's one-on-one interaction. And we have a daily Zoom meeting for the students so that every day we're checking in with them in some live interaction, and we have access to other tools as well, but we want to make sure we're seeing them and having a conversation with them. And we use student reflections. This is a chance for them to think every day about what they know, and we want them to also complete this in a Google Doc that all the supervisors can see and have visibility to. We use Slack for any time of asynchronous kind of discussion, other conversations, other questions that come up. And we have tiered difficulty of the projects so that they can, we can try to figure out where the students are and match the students to that type of project. This is just the list of reflection questions that they answer every day. And we want them to be used to not knowing the answers. So like, what do you not know? What is your question today? As well as like, what did you learn? And then we, at the end of the week, we want them to realize their challenge that they had that week was the biggest thing. And we want them also to write down what are they proud of, like actually take note of that and continue on.
Yeah, so here are Thomas and Dawit. They both joined the program the same year off recommendations. They are two of our students who participated in our virtual cohort. They lived in Texas. And so it was very interesting. I think Dawit had very little coding experience, and Thomas had a little exposure using Python beforehand. So they actually had more experience than most students who come into our program who have never even seen what code looks like. And here we have the interns we have for this year. We have Thomas, who's joining us again. We have Jalen. She lives in Atlanta, but she participates in our virtual cohort. She took a natural liking to the UX part of what we teach, and so we thought it'd be interesting to try that out. And we have Antonio. He's one of our in-person students that we teach at South Atlanta High School.
Okay, this is just an example of like how it looks when we're interacting, and this is from this year, so that we realized in the first year we did a lot of meetings where it was 2 to 1, so one supervisor with the 2 students, and we realized then over the course of the year, one, that both students were very quiet, but then the one student would really hold back if the other student was in the room because Thomas was able to be more comfortable and confident about his coding. And so we weren't sure why the other student was not saying as much. So then this year we adopted a group meeting on just one day of the week so they hear about each other's work. But then on the other days, it's just a one-on-one interaction. All right, I'm going to just quickly show some pictures of what they did, but then we're going to show a video of some of the work that Thomas did. Then he did some voiceover as well. So these are interactive physics plots so that there are sliders that's not quite visible here. And so one of the projects was that, there's obviously a lot of graphs and plots in physics, and that if the students could change those numbers and see the changes in the plots, that's way more informative, educational, and interactive experience than if they just see a static plot, and this would be for MIT students or the MOOC learners. And these are some that Thomas worked on recently. This was a year 1 interactive genetics plot, so some of these plots we had the same sort of issue and like nice to have request for our courses. Oh, sorry. And so the genetics plot is would be also something similar to the physics example. Then we have this case where it's another type of genetics plot that Thomas was working on. And what you'll be able to see is that he then took it to another level, and instead of just being 2D, making it 3D. And he'll walk through this in the video in a minute. Another case of a project would be accessibility improvements. So although we know what to do for accessibility, either different users, coding in things, this is a case for a table and having questions and tables. And you may recognize that this is not an automatic choice in the Open edX platform of choosing how to do this problem type, like how to have a table, how to have inputs within a table. So this all has to be coded. There are specific tags for accessibility within tables that need to be there. And we recently had accessibility audits in which MIT was listing out some cases where some of the tags were missing. And so Jalen has interest in user experience design, and we figured that accessibility is key in that sort of field. And she's learning about accessibility and able to address these sort of audit issues that came up and being able to put it right into practice. If you want, you can go.
Oh, yeah. So for a lot of our students, this is their first time being able to secure a internship, which is pretty instrumental. I'm sure y'all have seen the jokes on LinkedIn. You have to have experience to get experience. And so as a way to ensure our students are ready to compete, they're completing these jobs while they're 16. So when they turn 18 and they're ready into that job market, they're ahead of the competition.
Yeah, so these materials were immediately deployed in live courses. So we were, as soon as they finished something and we're like, we review it, approve it, then we could put it right into a live course. So they're real things that are being used and not just a special student project. There are also new Open edX users where they were working with the code of Open edX and learning how to use it, but also then last summer, the new problem editor was deployed, and there were a lot of bugs in the new problem editor that the students were some of the first finders of that we could report, or they were able to explain in more detail what they were finding. And some of it was like, oh, this should be easy, just go ahead and try it. And they would be like, I can't get this to work. But because they're new, they don't know, is this me or is this the platform? And it actually was a platform in a number of cases that we were able to hopefully encourage them that you're actually doing work for an entire community by what you're doing this summer. For us, it's a positive work experience, to work with the students, get to know them so well, but also then as professionals, to be able to interact and even see what other courses are doing. It's informational that you don't necessarily have time to sit down and work through and go through. And that way it's learning from both sides. The students are learning, but we're also learning from them. We're learning from each other throughout this process. We realized throughout the time that the students needed some input about college applications. As was mentioned earlier, it's very complicated. So when we just told Thomas, that there's essays for college applications, he didn't realize. And I'm like, that students are already starting those in the summer. And then he's like, oh, okay, I should. And then we were telling him how to find the questions because those questions are public and available. So we just gave him those sort of hints and tips and nudges. And then he was able to start in July trying to write his essays. And then the success of the first year was just that we can continue it with the support of open learning now into 2024.
On the screen.
Yep.
So here's a little background on kind of the results that we see. So Thomas came in, has a household income of around $50,000, which actually puts him, $30,000 above our average student. He loved technology. He wasn't really sure where he wanted to go in the future, but he had a little coding experience. So while in Empowr, at that point we were teaching iPhone development. So Thomas was helping his class build a job market for teenage users, and he was the lead developer while we were doing that. He completed his internships through MIT, and he was accepted early admissions into MIT. It cost Empowr $10,000 to support a student through a 4-year program, with the average salary for MIT graduate being $124,000. So it's a 1,200% return on the dollar for everything, for our work.
And for the international audience, $50,000 U.S. salary yearly is probably like around the poverty line, like almost, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like it's average salary in the U.S., but it's like near, it's on the low end. So. All right, so in summer 2024, then we have already had some results that we were. It's another conference coming up in October, and we decided that we could submit a paper about their work and the program to the conference, and even if it doesn't get accepted, that we could submit this elsewhere as well, but really just documenting what they're doing and having the students be part of the writing process. And so through that, the students were able to learn about the different parts of a paper, what goes into writing a paper, and even for a few practice writing some.
For this year, for our student with the highest income, this internship is still increasing their household income by about 40%. So this internship is making a significant impact on the finances for that family. And for some of our other students, it's increasing their household income by over 100%.
And so already this summer, Jalen had a sort of like aha moment when one of the conversations like Thomas did last summer. And so Jalen has started her college list of where she may want to apply soon. And both Jalen and Antonio came in saying, oh, I'm not really sure I know how to code. Like they didn't really have very much confidence, but already you can see the difference. And Jalen's actually asking in her low coding experience type project, like, can I do something that's more advanced? So I think they're, and Antonio, I was telling Adrian that he's like taken off. He's been able to do so much already with the physics plots this summer. Okay, so some of the factors that we realize that's key to collaboration being a success is having key stakeholders like Adrian and I, like people that are going to like be invested in it, completing and getting seen through from start to finish. There's mutual benefits to the collaboration, that there's student benefits, but even on the MIT side, we're able to do work that we were not able to get done otherwise. But I think there's just like the benefits of us being educators working with students so closely that is beneficial and motivating for us as well. And these are manageable projects that work for students. I think that's key, not having something that is too big or too small that's not interesting as well. And we, within the Digital Learning Lab, we have a lot of just things we've created ourselves as resources on how to use the Open edX platform, or like hacks or tricks. And so we just sort of use those as needed with the students of when you need to try something. And I know that there's been recent videos and other tools that we have throughout better documentation that John has been working on. So using those resources as a tool for students to learn how to use the platform. And then we have this shared supervision that I mentioned earlier is useful. And this daily check-in, conversation, reflection, making sure that no one's just lost. And we'll wrap up here with the slide part, just as you go adjusting to the students. We wanted to make sure that, I mean, that would have not worked if we said, here's the plan for the entire 2 months at first. And one of the students would have just like sort of given up. Like if you just say both of you have to go at the same pace. And building communication skills, we realized early on, is just as important as the professional skills. I mean, that is a key professional skill. So that they needed the work and practice on, and they had to do it in a context that they may not have been comfortable with, the new people and a new environment. And we realized the college advice is useful. Even just telling stories of how we decided to study what we studied then is informational to them. And as educators, like being able to prompt the students with a lot of questions would help with being able to get them to think about what they're learning, and then us to realize where they're struggling or what they need help with. And just giving the instructions and checking in. and yeah, just working together when they're stuck. So what I wanted to do now is play a video that Thomas did of his work.
These Python functions to essentially define the initial. Some of the work I've done was making these questions. Some of them are relatively simple to code, like this. Some of them have a more complex way to make them, where you would have to use open edX's XML, and this is one example of that. Outside of that, I've also worked on making visualizations, such as this one. So this is something I've made for the physics department, and essentially it uses bokeh, which is a Python library for making graphs. And I use these Python functions to essentially define the initial starting points, and then use JavaScript to constantly update it when it's given input through these sliders. These sliders determine some of the parameters of the function, and thus they'll be able to update the function as soon as you change them. Some of the graphs are a bit more complicated than others. For example, I developed this graph, which essentially is supposed to calculate genetic drift and some different parts of genetic drift. And there's too computationally expensive to just have in JavaScript because of the amount of data they're generating. So rather, I implemented a server solution, as you can see with this app.py and Flask. But essentially, this would be able to generate all the data in Python and then send it to a front end that's essentially a website. And the idea is that it would be made into an iframe that's implementable essentially anywhere. Or it could be used to host a local website that someone on, say, the Wi-Fi could access. So let me go ahead and run this. And if I open this, then you should be able to see. So this is the graph I was working on. This one, instead of using bokeh as before, with this graph, it uses Plotly, a different Python graphing library. And I have 4 different sliders. All of them provide input to some of the functions I've shown before. Now, there's a different form of input. This dropdown allows for different graphs to be displayed. And I've also coded these filters, which essentially filter the amount of values that you see. So say if the amount of generations you have is 100 and you want to see, say, 1 to 10, then this would be able to limit the amount of generations from 1 to 10. I've also made a filter for specific replication, so if you want to see the 4th out of the amount of simulations, or 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. And then you can uncheck if you wanted to see all. So that's some of the work I've done over the summer.
All right, so I'm going to go back to the last slide, and then we can open things up for questions. I just want to emphasize how we didn't give Thomas or any of the students the answers, just sort of, you know, we have some plots, they may be in another language, another type of system, and we need them converted into Python or JavaScript and then be able to be embedded into the open edX platform, which we didn't show that step in the video, but then they end up being in a course. So we can take questions from here. Thank you so much for being here and listening to the story.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So impressed. Don't want to lie. I'm trying to think the same setup in the context of Africa. I would be very biased in this one, South Africa in particular. I'm asking this because at the university level, we have challenges, especially when it comes to development or coding, of having graduates who graduates without knowing development, yet they are graduating with software development. And I'm trying to see if is there a way we can collaborate as universities in trying to empower not only learners from high school, but also at university, mainly those who are dealing with software development. This has then resulted on finding that our graduates, they struggle to get jobs. Even if you appoint them, you end up having to find somebody to work close to them and keep on helping them forever. It's main challenge that we face out there. I've got a team of developers. I could tell that some of our local students or graduates are struggling when it comes to development, like Python, for an example. And I see that you are doing such a wonderful job. I would want to find a way if we can collaborate as institutions. I think it's a common issue in South Africa and in general. We also have that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I can just say some comments and you can add on, but I just think for this type of work and at MIT in general, like it always is a long process to hire a full-time person. So then a student, we could have like, oh, we'll create your appointment within a week and we can set things up. So that was one advantage. And I think the being able to like look around and be like, what work do we have that we can have students do? And actually at MIT, we have students at the art university. They wouldn't be interested in necessarily doing work on educational projects because they are more, they enter maybe like the first year, they might be interested in this sort of thing, but a lot of them end up going into research or they go into even more advanced projects quickly, or if they're doing a summer internship, it may be at a private company where they'll make a lot more money. So then we quickly lose access to them being interested in like helping us. And so at the high school level was perfect because this is a challenge and it's something that will help build their resume for the future. So those are like some points to think about.
And it may not be so much university, but one of the things that, I did with my first set of graduates was I found local startups who just did not have money to pay for a developer. And I was like, can you give anything to my students to help develop your product? And so they would work on small tasks for them. And that helps build up their experience and just makes them more competitive in the marketplace.
Thanks for the presentation, both of you. Adrian, you and I met briefly, I think, last year, so it's nice to have you here again. I wanted to know a little bit more context about Empowr and kind of how these set of students fit in the Empowr program. So it's virtual, and you teach students coding, but I heard front end, I heard Python, I heard JavaScript. So is it kind of a mixed bag self-learning guided experience? Are you coaching them on particular languages, and then does everyone get an internship, or is this kind of something that you're experimenting with? Experimenting with.
Yeah, definitely a good question. So for us, so it's virtual and in person. So Antonio's from our in-person group where we taught directly in South Atlanta High School. And then Jalen and Thomas, they were both in our virtual cohort where, it takes place just on edX and Big Blue Button. But so it's a 4-year program, so it's really intensive. So we dive deep rather than go wide. So I don't have to get 100 students internships, it's more like class sizes of 10 to 15. And so because of that, if a student isn't ready, we don't give them an internship because, we definitely are big on excellency. But for those who are ready, we do work to get them internships. And so our students that you see have interned at MIT, they've also interned with the US Embassy and with Microsoft. And then if we had any more students who are ready, then I'd reach out to local startups so that way we can make sure everybody has an internship. But the program is kind of the first year they learn the foundations of software development. And that's when they get their MacBooks and everything. The second year is the pitch competition, where they pitch an idea to impact their community, and then we build it together as a class, and then they'll release it, and they'll own that as a business. The third year is when they do internships, and the fourth year is when they continue those internships, and we teach them more advanced skills, such as data structures and algorithms, and also job readiness. And so since we dive so deep, we never are working with too many students. It overwhelms us.
But I think you said this. You said something like it's wander in, wander out, and that made me think it was much more flexible.
Oh, so in the first year is when, we'll have probably, I would say this last year for Antonio's court, we've had probably, with in-person and virtual, we had probably 50 signups. By the end of the first 2 months, that's dwindled down to about 20. Those are the kids who just did not know what software development was. They didn't know if it was for them, but we enticed them. We're like, hey, if you join, you get a MacBook. Come figure it out. So they join. It's not for them. They give the MacBook back, but it was basically like a career day for them. They got exposure to an industry they didn't even know existed. These kids don't even think about who created TikTok. They just spend all day on TikTok. And so they definitely don't realize, Netflix has engineers making $500,000 to $1 million, and so you can actually have an amazing life being an engineer. But we focused on Swift back then because I was like, kids like iPhone apps. They actually don't care about apps. So now we do Unity. They learn C# and and it's also better for them because they'll build the games and then they'll play them against their friends in class. So it became way more interactive.
And just the last piece of humility on my side, there have been many times where I've built things less advanced than those, but you move a slider and make something happen. And very big universities are just floored that this is possible. And they're like, oh, do more of this. We'll pay you for it. So what these kids are doing is not.
We really had to emphasize that. We had to emphasize that with the students to be like, this is really amazing. You got it to work, especially without us. And so they really telling them all. Even the other student who was less confident the first summer, he had some of those working by the end of the summer. So then it's just trying to tell them this is amazing and trying to build their confidence because they're really humble. They don't realize what they're doing is hard.
I'd like to also add, I still Google how to center a div, so.
Have you figured it out yet?
Every time it's new.
So my question was around sort of what's next in geographies. Are you focused specifically in the US? Is there scope to start looking at interns from other locations?
So we're moving heavy on the in-person. We're pausing our virtual for this coming year. And that's just because with everything going on politically in America, we see a shift that we need to make in how we handle our virtual program to ensure that we can offer a quality education to everybody. So for in-person, we are actually going to be just expanding to different schools in Atlanta. And in the next 2-3 years, we hope to move to cities like Compton and other areas where they're facing the same issues, where it's heavily diverse populations that are just being completely forgotten and left out.
Yeah, I just want. I want to commend you, Adrian, for creating such a great nonprofit to generate such great economic impact, which is specific to the U.S. at the moment, but quite important in that region. And you, Mary Ellen, for listening to Adrian and providing these opportunities to the students with the internships. I'm curious, in the context of breaking barriers for MIT, is there a possibility to take it a step further? As we all know, it's quite difficult to get into MIT. But sort of students that have completed these internships, is there a way to allow them or get credits towards possible admissions as undergraduates, or has that been a discussion at all?
Yeah, so we didn't really emphasize, like, I have no say in admissions at MIT. This was like complete like luck of the first cohort of 2 people and 1 getting into MIT, and that not just luck, because Thomas has to earn it on his own credentials, his own application, and even the essay, he said he would show me to get feedback, but he didn't even show me. He just like submitted it, and he did early decision and got accepted. And so, I mean, we couldn't have had a better outcome from the first 2. And I think, but we realized, like, yeah, they're not all going to get into MIT. This is just something Thomas was interested in, and it worked out for him. I think the part where if they're interested in going to college and we can give them just advice about how to apply and how to get in and what the differences are between different schools, I think that's like, hopefully they all end up somewhere that they're accepted, where they fit, where they want to be. The other student wanted to be more close to home, so he would be staying in Texas and is staying in Texas this year. And then for credits, we don't necessarily grant credits for the online courses, but there are systems, as you likely know of, where if they take online courses, they could then use the certificates and things like MicroMasters at other places. And I think just making them realize there's this entire system of online courses that they could go and take for free and then even earn certificates. They could be using that. And what I usually encourage high school students to do is be taking any of our open online courses and not even worry about getting the certificate at first, but just to use that as preparation for university, so that you're not going to struggle in your university courses. You're not going to waste time in one major that you actually don't like because you never tried physics at the college level yet. You know, like, you be able to try as many different things as you can and then see what you like. And then when you get to university, you decide one major, then you already have some experience. I think just making as many students as possible aware of all these existing materials we all create that so many people just still don't know that even are out there and free to use.
And we do have plans in the future to see how we can become an AP certified course, since we're teaching directly in schools. But currently, we find, at least at the state level, the education standards don't fit into our standards of what excellency are. We're more real world, have them do things versus memorize, things.
Yeah, thank you. This was really interesting, and it sounds like you're doing amazing work. I was just sort of curious about some of the systemic issues that I think you've alluded to throughout the presentation, and how, at a broader scale, sort of how you see this sort of program transforming those. It's really clear there's this huge potential to transform the lives of these individual students, and I'm kind of curious how you see that sort of like coming back to the community, or what broad impact you see.
Yeah, so throughout I think a good part about our program is it's also like piloting how education can be taught. One of the statistics I'm sure everybody knows is, unless you're a man, you typically don't do well in STEM because there's all these other things that go on. But the girls actually do better in our program. They're easier, they do their homework, they stay. We have high retention with the girls. It's the boys who we have to actually be on. So, we learned that our style of collaboration actually works well with that. And so I want to eventually make this so reproducible that anybody else could do it, and that schools can kind of adopt this style of teaching. And I'm currently writing a paper to try and document that about how you have to take in a person's cultural history into how you teach them. But yeah, it's kind of a long process, but that's a goal.
Thanks.
Thank you.